So I'd say that is really, really good advice. So yeah, that's nonsense. I don't know what to say to that. I'm Tom Randall, and I'm going to be busting some climbing myths. Right, let's have a look. Hangboarding is dangerous. Well, this is absolute bollocks. Hangboarding is probably one of the safer things to do in climbing if you do it well. No top equals 15% power increase. No, I think there's something in it. I don't think it's 15%, but I think there's something in the fact that you take off your top, which I'm not always for, but it means you're putting yourself out there, so then you have to go all in. So there's something in it. Yeah, not 15% though. Socks are bad. No, they're not. They're great. I love socks, especially for slab climbing. I would say probably half the time for slabs I use socks. Nice tall socks are good as well. Off-whip thing, really good socks. You should always keep climbing despite injuries. The worst you can do is take a break. You know what? First of all, I read this and I thought, no, that's not true. But actually, the context is you should try and do something whilst you're injured. So I have been climbing for 25 years and I have had so many injuries. In fact, at any stage, I'm almost always injured in some way. I just work out a way to get around it. So I train a different part of my body, or I moderate my climbing to do something differently. So I'd say that is really, really good advice. Right, folks, I have a little code to give you for an offer on Magdust at the moment. It is free chalk 49, so FREE chalk 49. On any orders over $49, you get a free bag of Magdust. Don't tell anyone this, but if you also combine my own code, which is TOM10, which gives you 10% off in the checkout, you can combine the two together to get a mega offer. Don't tell anyone, but that's your tip. The most ridiculous myth is lose weight and you'll climb harder. This is a tricky one because actually, initially, it's true, unfortunately, because climbing is a strength to weight ratio sport or power to weight ratio sport, and you will see some advantage, which is why a lot of people see benefits from it, but the long-term effect from it is poor, and you'll often lose muscle mass, you'll increase injury risk, and you end up with all sorts of additional problems on top. So it's like very short-term gain, often very long-term detriment. If you sleep with your climbing shoes on, your feet will naturally evolve into toe hooks overnight. Who comes up with this stuff? I don't know what to say to that. No, don't. Not unless you sleep in clown shoes or something like that. Oh, it's hilarious. Climbing every day is good and will make you stronger. Yeah, I can kind of get behind this actually. It's more like the nuance of this is climb every day, or you can climb every day, but you have to climb in a different manner. So a lot of the days need to be probably very, very easy, as in ridiculously easy, almost like going for a walk or a scramble where you're just moving and you're improving your psychology, your movement skills, your flexibility, everything like that. But climbing hard every day is a mistake, for sure. Magdust makes you fly. Well, no it doesn't. I'm sorry, Magnus. I'm sorry, Dust. The combination of you two did not make us fly. Those rubber finger training bands that instead of training you to close your grip, train you to open your grip. Okay, so these are like the extensor bands that you use on your fingers. It depends on what you think you're going to get from that exercise. So the forearm muscle as a whole has flexors and extensors, and all of these have an important part in climbing performance. And when you train any muscle, you can train it in a specific way and a non-specific way. Both are good and both have their role within performance. So these extensor bands that you use in any format are good for training the extensors in a non-specific climbing manner. That's what they're good for. They're not going to make you better at hanging on a fingerboard, but they build into the overall picture of muscle and soft tissue conditioning. That's how that works. Riding in a wheelchair to atrophy the muscles in your legs to be lighter is my favourite myth. You know what? There was actually a year or two where me and Pete seriously talked about getting both of our legs put in plaster cast because we wanted to try this project out in the US, which was this roof crack where we were hanging on monos and the skin and the tape kept on splitting because it's just super hard. And we thought maybe if we put our legs in plaster cast for 6 months, we would lose so much muscle on our legs that we'd then get up the route. I think careful looking at it meant that we rejected that idea. But it did get discussed quite a bit. We talked about whether we'd even gone the plane to the US in our plaster cast still, and we'd only take it off when we got to the base of the route. If I take time off, I will lose strength. Technically speaking, this is true as long as the time off is long enough. So it's like a curve. Initially, you'll actually see an improvement in strength because you're recovering and you're super compensating from the training you're doing. But eventually you'll plateau in that adaptation and then you'll start to lose it again. So that's the truth behind that one. Active rest is better for recovery than sedentary rest. Yes and no. It depends on the situation. It depends on the individual and what you're trying to achieve. I would say for the most part, most climbers, active rest is the better one to do something to keep moving, to keep motivated, often just staying psyched essentially because you're in an active lifestyle sport. But sometimes doing absolutely nothing is really good, especially when those individuals who never ever stop, the kind of hyperactive types or the people who train too much, I think that sedentary rest can actually be better for those lots. Also, if you're ill, that's another really good time to take genuine sedentary rest, is if you're really sick, actually stop. So, both of them. To progress, I need to apply maximum effort to all of my training days. Is that a myth? Yes, it is a myth, because you don't need to apply maximum effort to all of your training days. I would say you need to apply it to some of the training days, and that's the beauty of good training plan, organisation and strategy. Is I would say almost everyone, all the way up to Jakob Schubert, if he was to put in maximum effort on every single training a day over a period of 10 years, he would burn out and he wouldn't be the performer that he is today. Some days he goes lighter. So yeah, I would say that's a myth. But the ethos of it is kind of correct. Like, you do need to put in very high quality into a lot of training to get very, very good at climbing. Lifting heavy will make you huge. It can do. If you lift heavy, you do high reps, and you take performance enhancing drugs, then yeah, you will get pretty big. If you lift heavy, you do high reps, you have very high protein intake, and you are of the body type which puts on muscle mass easier than some others, then you will get somewhat huge and you'll have that adaptation. But if you lift heavy, do very low reps, and you have appropriate amounts of protein intake, you don't take performance enhancing drugs, then you will not get huge. There you go. I mean, you only have to look at professional climbers. Lots of climbers lift heavy and they don't get massive. You don't need to strength train until you are climbing at an elite level. Strength training is high intensity effort at a low volume, and you have to do that to progress. It's extremely hard to go through the grades unless you're doing something like that. So yeah, that's nonsense. No, I don't like that one. Okay, climbers should never perform resistance training with their legs. This one is tricky, because I would more or less agree with this in some senses, that if you take resistance training as being non-sport specific weights work or high intensity cardiovascular training on the lower body, then yeah, I agree that that's not a particularly good path towards climbing performance. But there is forms of resistance training that you can do for the hamstrings to improve things like heel hooks, for example, which are really useful to come into climbing training and performance. And so you could do resistance training on that and it would be really useful. So it's a nuanced thing. It's complex, I would say. Strength training doesn't make you a better climber. Strength training on a climbing wall will make you a better climber, but strength training off the wall won't make you a better climber. Like better as in, I'm going to take better as meaning more skilled. But what we have to remember here is that a very important aspect of strength is skill. So you can simply improve your skill in a strength and you will look and be stronger. And that's a thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. People just think it's about muscle fibers and tendon stiffness and things like that. It's also skill. So that's a super important part to understand here. And that's why when you strength train on a climbing wall, you will become more skillful. So the statement is, climb with straight arms and rely on your skeletal structure. Yeah, this has its place, I would say. It's an efficient way. It's a certain style of climbing and it can be really good in some cases. A lot of route climbers will climb this way. So yeah, I'm behind that in certain instances, and I think, yeah, it definitely has its place. Not all the time. Don't over rely on it. You just need stronger tendons. Do you just need stronger tendons? No, you don't just need stronger tendons. You need strong tendons. You need well adapted. You need conditioned tendons. You need stiff muscle tendon units. But you also need strong muscles. You also need good metabolic function. You need good recovery, flexibility. There's so many different parts that go into it. So it's not just strong tendons, although they are useful. Tendons take several years to strengthen in climbers. Yes, tendons are slow adapting units on the whole. There's a number of different parts or factors which take up if you were to break down why is a tendon working well for climbing performance right now in an individual, it's not just one facet of it. But so there are some parts you can see adaptations in the tendon, let's call it tendon nature, that can occur quite quickly, but others that will take a very, very long time. The blood supply network is really poor, so it's something, for example, on recovery that takes a really long time. If you're injured, you need full rest. No, this is not true. If you are injured, what you need to do is find a way to appropriately rehabilitate that injury. So you can't make a blank statement around full rest for any injury. It's totally individualized. One injury is just not the same as another one, so the pathway can look completely different. Sometimes it is full rest, many times it's not, and many times you can train another part of the body or multiple parts of the other body to still do things. If you find a weakness, you should train to fix it. I'm going to say there's two parts to this. If you find a weakness, the first thing you should do is really analyze how this actually affects your performance and training. That's the most important thing. So it's almost like to categorize and profile the weakness itself and understand what is the effect. And then you look at training or adapting your climbing to fix it. I think that is the most intelligent, strategic thing to do, because some weaknesses you may never get over and take too much time and too much investment to actually do something about it. Other weaknesses are simple fixes and have a huge effect. So they can be very, very different.